Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Eden Road podcast, where on today's show we're previewing a big trip to the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium on Saturday, a reunion with Thomas Frank. I'm delighted to say that Flav from the Fighting Cock is back. Flav, how you doing?
I'm really well, mate. Yeah, good. I mean, frustrating start to the season, but generally I'm in a happy place.
Good to hear. We'll get into all of that. Just remember, before we get going, remember to drop a comment down below. Subscribe to the YouTube and Spotify channels. Follow us on the socials at the Ealing Road on Twitter, at Ealing Road Pod on Instagram. Just to say as well, we're recording this Thursday morning, so bright and early from the defeat at Arsenal yesterday. But Flav, I think I was kind of doing the running order, and I didn't really need to do one because there's so much to talk about, at least from a Brentford's perspective. And I thought this would be more of a discussion rather than me just kind of firing questions at you. Because
I've got some questions for you.
yeah, I know, exactly. I think I and a lot of other Brentford fans have been watching Spurs really closely this season. I don't think I've ever watched as many games from another club in a season as I have Spurs this year. And been consuming a lot of Spurs content, listening to your pod, listening to the Athletics pod as well. A lot of Last Word on Spurs. And to be honest, I had a really weird experience the other night. I was watching the Newcastle game and I didn't celebrate the Spurs goal, but I just got up from my sofa and went, "Yep, that's one." When Romero scored the first.
Yeah.
I'm in a kind of weird spot, and I think a lot of other Brentford fans will be as well, because I really want Thomas Frank to do well, and it's really painful to see him he's not got the backing. I think you mentioned on your pod it's like 50-50 now. But before we kind of talk about Thomas Frank in a bit more detail, what were your thoughts on the appointment first when the rumours started?
I thought I was happy. I thought it was. It felt like a sensible decision. You know, remember we'd had 2 years of Ange Ball, which started brightly and ended in the Europa League. But the story of Postecoglou's time at Spurs was about him not getting to grips with football in the Premier League, and that is your bread and butter, and that is what the litmus test and the place where fans feel most comfortable is when you're winning Premier League games. The Europa League win was magnificent, historic for us, and will be remembered for a long time. But in terms of general happiness and how the contentment you feel about following your football club, it's how well you're consistently able to play in the Premier League. Frank inherited a horrendous Premier League record. Effectively a team that couldn't compete in the league. And mostly we put that down to Ange Postecoglou's tactics. And Frank definitely has improved us in terms of our ability to be competitive in the league. But the biggest issue with him is the inability to win at home games. So when he was appointed, it felt like the complete sensible thing to do. And I was absolutely fine. The only hesitation we had was, will he adopt a similar tactic that he had at Brentford in the Premier League, which has served you so well? But the level of expectation at Spurs is one that means that we want to see a certain brand of football, and if we don't see it as we haven't this season, then it becomes an issue. And there are conversations whether or not we should even demand a style of play. You know, how dare we? But yeah, no. When he was signed, I thought it was the right choice. It felt like he deserved a shot, and yeah, I was fine with it, really.
What about now? What's the sentiment towards him now?
Honestly, I've never this quickly turned on a manager, and I'm not saying I want him out. I think it's unfair. I was back in Ange until March, and we were losing games hand over fist because I essentially, there was a couple of things. He was good at. He was good at getting you on board by saying the right things, and so you believed in him way past the point where you should have done. That was what I was sort of very much drunk the Kool-Aid for Ange Postecoglou. But I kind of believed in his philosophy and hoped and for a long time thought, if this works, it is going to be magic. And it just never did, really. Even winning the Europa League, we reverted to an ultra defensive style of play. Mm-hmm. So yeah, no, I can't say I'm full of confidence that Frank can turn this around, and his style of play is difficult to absorb, and our inability to get shots off or even hit the target at times is immensely frustrating. And I appreciate that wasn't really an issue when he was at Brentford, and he had different style of play. Different profile of players which means that his tactics were much more effective. You know, he would hit the fullbacks constantly. The wingers he would find his wingers and they would be in good positions to hit the fullbacks and put crosses into the box. And I can see what he's trying to do. It's just not working for us. And I've been speaking to a couple of Brentford fans. I think you probably know him, Adam Rosenbaum as well. He's a photographer, and he sat down and watched the Newcastle game, and he said that the problem isn't Thomas Frank, in his opinion. The problem is the profile of player we have.
That's a really interesting point, and I had this a bit further down the running order. With the profile, I was listening to View from the Lane the other day, and Jay Harris was asked how much did Brentford pay for Mbumo, Wissa, and Sharda? Around 35 million. Richarlison cost 50, and I'm in the category of, and I'm always going to be in the category of, I think maybe there is a touch of overrating of this quality of Spurs' squad from Spurs fans. And I get that because I overrate my players too. But having watched, we all do. Having watched a lot of Spurs this season, having watched a lot of Brentford this season, we actually did a combined 11 on the last episode of our podcast, and no more than 4 Spurs players get into our strongest 11. Genuinely. And I've watched a lot, and I don't want to put this, I just think there's been so much.
What players did you put in? Just
the defense, Romero, Van der Ven. I'm taking one of the midfielders, but going forward, especially in the forward areas, I'm not having any of them, to be honest. Over what we've got.
Not Kudus
as well. So Kudus, yeah.
Right. Okay. Oh yeah, no, look, I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
I don't disagree with any of that really. But we haven't seen enough.
I think Thomas Frank is bearing the brunt of years of poor recruitment. And I know that Levy's gone now, so it must have felt like when he went, maybe it's going to get better. But the frustrating thing for me, at least watching it, is because of the poor start, it's like, well, we don't want to give Thomas Frank windows to make it better because what we've seen is not sustainable. But like you said, when we were watching Brentford in the Championship, when we were watching Brentford, even in the back end of our Premier League, like in the last season, we were playing some really good football. But what it tells me, especially his reluctance to kind of start Simmons, start some of these more creative players, it tells me that he doesn't have the confidence behind those players to be able to do it. But I am surprised with how, I mean, what was the game at home against Fulham? Fulham, like the spamming of the crosses, I can understand why that pisses a lot of people off, because it's just, it doesn't look like there's a plan B.
Do you know the frustration for me? It turned massively on the North London derby because I was ashamed of how we played, and I was ashamed at how negative the tactic was. And I've never been embarrassed watching Spurs in North London derby, and I was like, we've just bent over for them. We've just said, we're so terrified of you, of what you could do to us if we try and play at all. We're just not going to do anything, and we're going to cower. That's what it felt like watching, and for me, that's unacceptable. And that had a massive impact about how I felt about Thomas Frank.
Yeah.
Now, the pragmatic, sensible side says you're going to go to Arsenal, be tight, be compact, don't be easy to beat. That is what he's going to be thinking is the correct way. But such is that fixture that it's just not the way. It's just not acceptable to do that. You have to go toe-to-toe. We lost 4-1 anyway. I'd rather lose 4-1 having a go than just sitting back, having a back five with 2 screening centre midfielders. I've never seen anyone do that at Spurs. It's not that we might not be as good as we think our players are. I agree with you there, Mike, right? But we're better than that. And so that was a big problem for me. And against Chelsea, we just got absolutely overrun. But he's 14 games, Premier League games into his tenure. And, you know, it's so early. He could do so much positive work. And I think there is this kind of hangover of disappointment from what we've had under Mourinho, Conte, Nuno, and obviously, and now Frank. It's like, I think he's bearing the brunt, and I can acknowledge this while thinking that he might not be the right fit for Spurs. That he's actually bearing the brunt of 4 or 5 years of discontent.
Yeah,
and that's not his fault. And if he was playing a different brand of football and we were in the same position, I don't think things would be much different. It's just he's the figurehead of the football club. The head coach always bears the brunt, and And do you know? I don't know how you feel, right? When he was at Brentford, I noticed it when we played Spurs, and he kept talking about how good Spurs were when he was Brentford manager.
Yeah.
All he does is praise the other team. All he does. Every time we play, great. Against Newcastle, brilliant side, really good side, great players, great manager, everything. And you're like sitting there and you're like, all right. And then the next game, great. Arteta, incredible manager. And you're like, just stop talking about the other team.
I know.
But
Yeah.
I don't know. I know he gets asked.
Do you know what it is? He needs some PR, because some of the things that he's coming out with, he's like, the thing is, and it annoys me because you can tell that he's an honest guy and he's a really nice guy. Like, he comes across as a very likable manager.
Of course.
But in his presses, when you see the quotes, and I've been watching some of the press conferences without context, when they get picked up by the aggregators on Twitter, all that does is serve to turn more fans against you. You know, when he said, I promised we'd lose and I've succeeded. And it's just like, fucking, what are you doing?
Yeah.
When you just
give yourself a chance.
I know, exactly. But you mentioned
the other thing, the other thing, Mike, was the one that really wound everybody up. He said we're going to have 10 perfect games, 30 average games, and 10. And you're like, I don't want that prediction. That's a terrible prediction. Some of us are paying 2,300 quid.
I know. We'll get onto that, and I understand that that's probably one of his like main fault, and you know, the whole booing thing as well, not calling them true fans. And I know you guys talked about it at length on your pod, but they have, and I said this in a TikTok. I said they have the right to boo with the utter shite that they have been served up in 2025, regardless of whether it was an honest mistake or
so
not.
Bad. It's been so bad, Mike.
Exactly. So they can do what they want with the amount of money they're paying as well. But another thing, you know, North London derby. What really confused me is that I then watched the PSG game afterwards, and it's like, where was this against Arsenal? Because, you know, pound for pound, if you're talking about Arsenal and PSG, probably the two best sides, or two of the three best sides in the world. And then you go to the Parc des Princes and you put in a performance. You know, obviously you can see 5 goals is not very good, especially for a pragmatic manager like Thomas Frank. But I was just thinking, the way that you went man for man in the press, I watched that whole game and I just thought, that's what Thomas Frank can do. Where was this against Arsenal?
Yeah. I guess he mended a lot of like that. Despite scoring conceding 5 goals, you're like, yeah, this is aggressive. We're going man for man, and we conceded 5, which he probably looked at and go, well, we can't do that again. But they were. It was almost like it was 5, but it wasn't 5. I don't know if that makes any sense. You got Vitinha, who is just unbelievable, that guy, and we can conceded. There's a penalty in there and whatnot. So, but. The question mark was why didn't we do that against Arsenal? Interestingly, I think he tried to do something similar against Fulham, not quite the same. Whereas PSG would absolutely, under no circumstances, hit it long, because that isn't Enrique's philosophy, or it didn't seem to be, certainly in that game. Fulham were happy to just hit it long and make it a duel. So every time we pressed, they went long, and then there was a question about desire and whether or not you wanted to win the ball. And that's something that at Brentford, he never failed to achieve from his players. You're always ready to duel or win your duels in that second ball. Whereas at Spurs, we seem unable to. Like, it must be confusing. Like, I understand when you have the financial disadvantages that Brentford have compared to a club like Tottenham, for example, it is an advantage of yours to level the playing field by engineering situations where 2 players have to duel for a ball. No matter how good you are, you know, whether you're Xavi Simons or you're Odegaard, if you're having to asked to duel against Paulinho or Norgard last year, you're going to lose that ball. So I understand the tactic and understand the leveling of the playing field. But so when we've been put in that situation with Spurs, our players can't do it. Like, we need the different profile of player. Paulinho can, and you know, I think he would be good for Brentford. I think he would probably get in. But other than that, you know, Archie Gray and Berval and Bentancur is a big problem.
Yeah, so, I know he's dropped off massively, hasn't he?
Yeah, I didn't know what the question was, mate. Sorry.
No, it's okay. I was just I was going to go through some of the Spurs results, and I know that it's been. I think there was a kind of turning point in the season where it kind of just started to go downhill pretty quickly, and the results stopped coming. Probably the Wolves at home. Would you say since then it's been pretty bleak?
We beat Everton away, but it was a 3-0. But it was a very sort of, we scored to.
I'm not having that. I'm not having Spurs fans being angry about a 3-0 away.
I'm not angry. I'm not angry, but it was a great performance.
Yeah,
it was.
This is part of it. And I feel like I'm defending Thomas Frank so much to the point where I don't know if I'm just got like rose tinted glasses on. But I saw Tottenham fans after a 3-0 away win at Everton come out and say it was a shit performance because you scored 3 goals from set pieces. And I'm just thinking, lads, you won 3-0 away. Do you think Arsenal are leaving Goodison Park pissed off because they won 3-0 and it all came from set pieces? I hate to bring up Arsenal.
No, of course they're not. I look, if you listen to our podcast after that, we were positive and we felt good, and it wasn't the case of us being unhappy with the performance. But you look at it and people go, "Oh yeah, but you beat Everton 3-0 away from home." Yeah, we did, but that doesn't answer. Thomas Frank didn't answer any questions if there were any questions asked him at that point. That wasn't a shining example of it. We won 3-0, but it didn't feel like a 3-0 win.
Right, okay.
I think we were flattered by the scoreline there a little bit, and that's just being honest rather than being, perhaps, yeah. And don't get me wrong, I think Spurs fans are part of the problem here. We are. Our expectation is a part of the problem. What we're demanding of our players is probably a part of the problem. But what you've also got to remember, Mike, right, is we are told, and we have to pay ticket prices that back this up, that we are a part of the elite or the big six in the Premier League, but we don't win anything. We are clearly the worst of that big six. We aren't picking up FA Cups or challenging for league titles or going for the Champions League. So what do we have if we don't have an identity and a way of playing and something to get behind? And that's, look, if Thomas Frank wins, no one's complaining. We can play the most defensive football on earth. If he's picking up an FA Cup or challenging for the league, everyone's happy.
Yeah.
The problem with his style of play and being Spurs manager is that when it doesn't work, the rope is very short. And, Conte fell for it and so did Mourinho. And these are the two, it's just, I think we're in this weird purgatory where nothing is going to work. That's what it feels like.
I want to talk about the home form, unfortunately for you, after this question. But
yeah,
from these games, and I'm looking at them from the start of the season, you got PSG in the Super Cup. A little bit of a caveat that they didn't have a pre-season going into that. But Man City away, 2-0, played them off the park. You've got little glimmers. The second half at Brighton, even Newcastle in the Carabao Cup, I thought you were decent. Is there anything from these? And I feel like this is something that Spurs fans I've heard say a lot. It doesn't feel like there's anything from the opening games, bar the big ones against PSG and maybe Man City, that Tottenham fans can hang your hat on and say, yeah, no, I can see this getting better. I can see players getting better. I can see Thomas Frank here next year challenging for Europe, for example. Is there anything that you can hang your hat on?
Not yet, no.
No,
not really. I mean, not your opinion, Brentford fans' opinion. Give me a moment's pause and a cause, of some semblance of optimism, because you're saying to me, I've seen Brentford play good football, and in the Premier League, and I've watched Brentford against Spurs last year. I thought, even though we won the game, it was Brentford are really competitive and deserves to get something out of it. And I remember the barrage of crosses and consistent pressure that we were under in that game. We defended we defended well relative to Postecoglou's football. So in that instance, I can think, right, well, surely he'll get it right in the end. And my feeling generally with him is that he'll make more right decisions than he will wrong ones. And if you're making sensible, correct decisions in football, that goes from the top to the bottom, that inevitably, eventually, you move in the right direction. I also think that maybe Frank isn't the problem, and the structure at Tottenham is more of an issue. So a head coach can do a lot of good and make swift change in the positive direction. But you look at Keith Andrews and what's happened at Brentford, and you realise that actually, if Benham is there, you are fine regardless of what happens, because he will make the right decisions. He always has made the right decisions. He doesn't become as wealthy as he is in the way that he made his money if he wasn't a supremely intelligent man who made the right decisions, right? If you look at Tottenham, you've literally got Keith Andrews, who's knows the game, has played it, had a good, decent career, but has been around football for his entire life. And he's gone from set piece coach to manager, and you haven't gone backwards. I mean, I don't know. I can't tell you the difference between the way you played last season and this one because I haven't watched enough.
It's quite similar.
Quite similar, right? So there's a structure in place. And so you can afford to lose these players. Look at Brighton, another shining example. The exodus of talent at that club. And they have a man and a scouting and a team in there, Tony Bloom and the people below him. Paul Barber especially is really an excellent CEO who will just make the right decisions so they can afford to lose these players. So Thomas Frank is coming into a club whose structure is being completely gutted and reinstated in a different form. And we've had new people come in, like Venkatesham has come in, is now de facto power broker in the club. Daniel Levy, who's institutionalized the club for 25 years, is gone. That's going to have an impact. And it will take time for this new structure to get up and running. And meanwhile, Frank has to do everything he can to do the things on the pitch. So now that we're talking, and I'm talking to you rather than just other unhappy Spurs fans, you can find ways to be positive and look for optimism in the future. But the biggest thing is just that we're not creating chances and the football is boring. And I know you're going to ask me about the home. Ask me about the home form.
So, in 2025, Spurs have the worst home record in the league. I'm pretty sure you are only better than Wolves this season at home, and Wolves haven't won a game yet. What is and I was listening to your podcast, and you told me, or you told the listeners, that some Spurs fans are paying £800 a win. I don't know if I've got that high. That seems high. Is that high?
No, that's correct.
That's true. That's correct.
So just under. It's just under. So the most expensive ticket is around £2,300, £2,400, and they've seen 3 wins in a calendar year. That is, divide that by 3. That's how much they're paying for a win. And that therein lies the biggest problem. Is your home form is supposed to be a play. It's something you can kind of bank on and build on. And away from home is where you might struggle to pick up points, but that's understandable. There's a couple of things. We have been really poor at home. You can't deny that because of what you just told me. It's like only Wolves have a worse record at home this season, and Spurs, I think, the calendar year probably is the worst. So that is going to impact how you feel. And I don't know if you saw The Athletic. They did a chart of how happy fans are from 1 to 20, and Spurs are rock bottom. That is down to the home form and Frank's style of play for sure at the moment. So you cannot. But by the same token, I think while ours is the worst, barring Arsenal, everyone struggled at home to some degree. I think the idea that you make your home ground the fortress is a bit of a myth in the modern era, because the quality of the opposition in the Premier League, in my opinion, has never been stronger. Yeah. I know they think this idea that there's this kind of cabal of big clubs that only they can ever compete, and that the drop off between the Premier League and the Championship is so big that it makes it essentially a super league for certain clubs anyway. I think it's all bollocks. I really do. I think with the right decision making and the right people in charge, Sunderland, for example, is a great example. Brentford is a better example. Bournemouth is a great example as well. Is actually the gap isn't really about quality. It's about decision making. It's about quality decision making rather than how many players you can bring in and how much you can spend. I think it's kind of a redundant way to look at it. And the result is a Premier League that's never been more steeped in quality, ever. And so these home bankers that you would expect, and despite what I've just said, there are 90% of Spurs fans, thinking about the game on Saturday against Brentford, thinking, yeah, it was Brentford, we got to win this. But the reality is, there's certainly no difference in quality this season because you're above us in the league. If anything, Brentford are better, right? So what this sort of pre-baked idea that certain games are winnable or historically were winnable and you expect to win them and you typically did, it's just gone. It's out the window. There isn't. No team seems to really have another one that they fear anymore. Like Arsenal, you would say Arsenal are the best side in the league, and they've been the most difficult to beat because they're defensively stable. But it's not about them sweeping teams aside or playing swashbuckling football. So, yeah, I mean, like this is if for a neutral, this is an excellent league to watch football, and no doubt it's the most popular league in the world. But as a fan who has pre-baked ideas about where clubs should be and how they should, to what level they're able to perform when they come and play at Spurs, it's just nonsense. It doesn't exist anymore.
I think that's why as well you've seen Arsenal place so much importance on set pieces, because that gap in quality isn't as big, or it is the kind of narrowest it's been in recent years. That's where they're looking for the fine margins. And I do, I get that the Spurs fans, they want a particular style of football because that's what Spurs have historically been associated with. But it does. I don't know. I think I went on your pod and I said, he's going to look at set pieces. It's going to be a big aspect of his coaching and his coaching staff too. And I just think I've heard it's become a stick. It's become a stick to beat him with rather than something. Yeah, we need to get ahead of the game like Arsenal have. And I understand, and I think there's a few things there to kind of unpack. But I do, the long throws. As soon as that starts to become an issue or something that you throw at the opposition, literally, when you're losing a game and they don't work, I can understand why the frustrations build. But
no, I think in the modern era, everyone's placing importance on it, and then we have to defensively and in the attacking sense. I have no issue with Danso lobbing in the grenade, right? I don't mind that. My problem is I want to see more football where we're attacking the goal and hitting the target. Yeah. 2 shots. We scored 2 goals from 2 shots on target. That cannot be. You cannot against Newcastle. You can't maintain that. It's impossible. 100% conversion rate is impossible from a centre back, no less. So we have to be. Frank has to find a way. And Cochrane has to find a way. And these guys, there's no chance they're looking at this going, I don't know what to do. They're looking at this going, why aren't the players able to do what we're asking them to do? Why is the opposition sussing this out so much? And the biggest problem with Arsenal, and we've had, is that Kudus is by far and away our best player. Newcastle performance was outstanding. But the tactic that seems most obvious employed by Frank and his team is to rotate the ball out to, and I don't know if you saw this at Brentford much. I don't know. Probably did because he had Mbeumo there, or Mbeumo. I'm never sure how to pronounce his name. Is it Mbeumo?
Mbeumo.
I've been calling him Mbeumo for about a year, and people keep going, you're saying his name wrong. All right, sorry. Anyway, Porro gets the ball. It's worked out to the fullback, and then we hit Kudus.
Yeah.
And it at times feels like the only way we're able to build. Is that something that
I've noticed it? Yeah, 100%. I've noticed it.
What about Brentford?
At Brentford, no. I mean, it's difficult because there's been like an evolution of how Brentford played under Thomas Frank. In the Championship, we had an amazing front three that I think probably goes down as the best front three the Championship's ever seen in Ollie Watkins, Brian Mbeumo, and Ben Rama. And this is the part that confuses me the most. Like you mentioned the last 4 games at home. When I'm seeing a Thomas Frank side put up less than 0.05 XG in a half of football at home, it's like, what the fuck? I've never seen this. Like,
because there's an assumption that that's kind of what happened at Brentford.
No. I mean, yeah, for us when we started out in the Premier League, I mean, he went a bit more pragmatic. But in the Championship, I've seen people saying he never played this kind of football in the Championship. It's just bollocks. Like, I went to the games, I saw the goals. We scored goals for fun in the Championship. We were the top scorers in a row.
What can you, in terms of, I quite like XG as a metric. I think it's very useful. I don't think it's the be all and end all, for obvious reasons. But what roughly was his XG last year at Brentford? Is it something that was ever discussed? Do you have that figure, or should I just Google it?
Because you can try, but I mean, last season we scored the 6th most goals in the league, so it's not like I'd imagine XG table for Brentford last season we were pretty high up.
But 6th, you'd imagine.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, you have to factor in as well the fact that we had Johan Wissa and Brian Mbeumo scoring almost 40 Premier League goals between them. We had Kevin Schade score 13.
Okay, that's interesting. So, how were your forwards utilised? What did Wissa do? I know all about Mbeumo, obviously, and Kudus is a similar profile. I'm not suggesting that they are on a similar level yet, but they maybe are. But how did you build up? Like, how did you? What did you hit it long to Wissa and you just able to hold it up and bring players in? Was it Mbeumo's screening? What did you do? How was it effective?
A lot of the time, our goalkeeper, Mark Fleck, would have the ball. The centre backs would split and we'd knock the ball around in our own defensive third for a while before we baited that opposition press. Then we'd either get the ball fast forward to Wissa, who dropped deep, or forward to Mbuma, who dropped deep, and rely on those runs to then get in behind. So it was all about last season, which is okay for a team like Brentford, especially when you're not having a lot of the ball. When you get the opportunity to attack and you've got the front players that we did, that's gonna equal goals. But I understand, like, Thomas Frank's problem this season has been able to scale up when you do have more of the ball and you are trying to unlock a low block or unlock a mid block, then you're going to run into problems. But I just feel like...
and he needs time to learn how to figure that out.
Yeah, exactly. How to do that. And he needs the players to be able to do it.
The problem, what we think the problem is then, is we can't seem to build through the midfield, or it seems like we don't attempt to. And it also seems impossible because you haven't got a ball player in Paulinho. He can pass. He's not awful, but he isn't Michael Carrick by any stretch, right?
No.
He is an elite ball winner. But his option next to him is Bentancur, who he seems to be playing parallel with, as opposed to Bentancur gambling a little bit more on Paulinho's ability to win the ball and being able to play through the middle. So I don't know, mate. I think also Richarlison isn't Wissa, right? Richarlison isn't really.
Richarlison, yeah, I know. It's just not good enough, to be honest.
No, he's not good enough, and we don't have an option. Like,
no,
you got Moani who's fresh to the league, and Richarlison.
I like Moani. I think Moani's done really well, especially in the games where he started to play a little bit more. But I know, we're kind of whipping out Ange excuses, but I think it's a massive blow to lose Maddison for the season, to lose Kulusevski for as long as you have, to lose Solanke. I don't know when they're back or when Solanke's back or Kulusevski.
This is part of the frustration, is because Frank, it's not his fault. He's been given messaging, but it's like, we don't know, hopefully soon. And you're like, just fucking tell
He did
us.
that at Brentford.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no point in lying if there isn't a date, but you're like, just give us, if it's December, just say it's December. But then, Postecoglou said that Kulusevski will be back in a week. It's just a knock. And that was in April. And he hasn't played a minute since.
I think, I think a lot of the problem as well, I'm sorry, I realise we've been going on a while, and I do want to talk about the game on Saturday as well.
Yeah.
Part of the problem is that it's so clear that he doesn't know his best lineup yet, and he keeps chopping and changing every week. There's still no, like, Xavi Simons supposed to come in as this big signing over the summer, fill that Maddison role, and that's for me, like, when he's not playing your £60 million signing at home against Fulham, it's like the team selection is killing him a little bit, especially with how much that would appease the fans. But what confuses me even more is that players like Xavi Simons have been foundations of some of Frank's best Brentford teams. Like, when you look at a player like Said Benrahma in the Championship, he's that kind of player.
But has he had one in the Premier League?
Damsgaard is that player. Like, they're quite similar. And Damsgaard hasn't been at the levels he was last season, but last season under Frank, he was, for my money, and I know I'm overrating my own player here, but for my money, he was one of the best players in the Premier League last season.
No. Damsgaard definitely has transcended just the Brentford fan base. I think we're all aware of how good player he is, and knows the league. Xavi Simons has just got here, and is showing glimpses of kind of settling in. But when you come with £60 million and 200 grand a week, the sort of humble, effective nature of Damsgaard, not least because of his. Everyone from Denmark seems to be kind of humble and sort of decent human being. But his efficacy on the pitch, he's great, Damsgaard. Yeah. And I completely appreciate that. And I'm sure he would be playing if he was at Spurs over, there wouldn't be question marks around him. And similarly, if Maddison was fit, he would be in that side playing. So, yeah.
I think last thing about the home form, it just feels so toxic at the moment. Pedro Porro, the nerve on Pedro Porro to put in a performance like he had against Fulham and come out and fucking, put that Instagram story up. And this thing that they're doing at halftime when they get into a huddle in the centre circle.
Mate, what is that all about? I don't know what it's about.
Yeah, I don't get it.
It feels a little bit like they're getting this wrong. They are getting this wrong. Porro saying, "Oh, the true fans," and look, I'm using language like that is not helpful.
No,
you understand his point in that his teammate is getting booed for a mistake, which is also, in my opinion, unacceptable. You made a point about it being understandable that given how the shit that's being served up, like you said,
Yeah.
that they would boo. Boo at full time. Boo a performance if you want to. But booing a mistake in a game for me is that I don't understand how that is helpful in any shape, form. But it kind of feels like it's like a bit of an us and them situation with some of the players. And that is toxic. That's cancerous. Yeah. That needs to be sorted out. And the huddle before they go off. I mean, it is. What are you like, Troy? I like
just
Troy
play
Deeney.
well. Just play well.
This is Troy Deeney said. You don't need a huddle, right? You don't need a huddle when you're leaving the pitch. You need to show you're together by performing in a certain way.
Yeah.
So I think that was fair.
Yeah, no, I agree. I just think the players, as much as I'm surprised by the start that Thomas Frank has made, and as much as the football's been crap and the team selection is confusing, I do just think the players, they have to take some accountability and kind of front it a little bit. But Flav, Saturday feels super big for Thomas Frank, especially with the kind of narrative around the game with the players that we've lost. Thomas Frank going to Spurs. How are you feeling ahead of it?
I weirdly in this situation now where I don't really feel anything. Like it's. I hope it goes well. I want to see some attacking football. I know how organised Brentford are. I know what problems we're going to have at set pieces, and I that's not very good. That's a terrible response for your podcast. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I kind of feel like we kind of live in. We're hoping we have a good performance. We're confident that we will have. And what else can I say when we've won 3 games at home in like in the last calendar year? So what I would like, I'd feel a lot more positive if we had a 4 at the back with a single 6, an 8, and a Xavi Simons 10, with a front line of Kudus, Odegaard, Otel, and Mawani up top. But what's going to happen when the team sheet comes out is none of that. And we'll have Bentancur and Paulinho in midfield, and we'll have Sarr or Berival in the 10. And so, yeah, as long as that remains, I kind of feel like a level of pessimism that's sort of hanging around. I can't, that athletic, where they were ranking the happiness ratings of each fan base, I knew would be bottom before even opening it because you can feel it, and you can look at how you know the mood of the fan base by the numbers of people that are listening to a podcast. Because I have access to that, and I look at it at the start of the season when we were full of hope. Our audiences have halved since the start of the season. That's how uninspired people are at the moment. And don't get me wrong. A string of good performances and you see it fly up. This has been the pattern for the last 15 years. But I know the mood of the fan base based on the kind of reactions to the podcasts that we put out, and it's just it kind of feels this way. I mean, it's a good time to play Tottenham if that makes you feel any better. But who knows? We might turn up and get a result, and we see it. He needs a performance.
Yeah,
and these players are together. They need to give him one, and Spurs fans are a reactive bunch. And if they see a good 10 minutes, the mood will change very quickly. We haven't seen good 10 minutes. We haven't seen a good 10 minutes of football, I don't think, at Spurs. When was the last time I legitimately can say we played really well at home?
Copenhagen, but they were shit.
Oh, okay, yeah. I mean, that doesn't. I mean, like against a decent side. Like, I'm not even going like Elfsborg, like Boda Glimt. They're awful sides. Matt, it's the fact that when was the last time Brentford played well at home?
The last game.
Yeah, right, there you go. So that's how we feel at the moment. And I don't think this sentiment and the way I feel is fair on Thomas Frank. And I think it can change. And a lot of it is down to 3 or 4 years of underperformance, really, and poor recruitment, and the tail end to a Daniel Levy legacy that was papered over by a Europa League win. So I don't know. Saying that, I think we'll win 3-1.
If I've got two more questions. If Brentford were to win on Saturday, Flav, and by the way, I love Thomas Frank and I wish him well at Tottenham, but if we did that, nothing would give me more pleasure than to see Brentford win on Saturday.
Yeah,
But
of course.
do you think that would be the end in terms of because I remember you talking about the percentages in terms of contentment with the manager.
Yeah.
If you lose against Brentford, is that the end of Thomas Frank's goodwill, at least from half of the fan base?
Yeah, I mean, it's gonna, the obvious answer is it's just going to get worse. Yeah, so there'll be more pressure. But there are so many examples in football where the will of the crowd is typically incorrect, and we are reactive, and we're allowed to be reactive as fans because that's what fuels football. But we also don't really know what we're talking about, right? And Arsenal fans en masse wanted Arteta gone. Look at him.
Yeah,
look at him. Clearly, you could argue the best manager in the league right now. Arsenal are now favourites for Champions League, and this is part of the problem as well. We haven't even mentioned is when your fiercest rivals are flying.
Yeah,
that it affects everything you do. You can't not acknowledge that. So, if Arsenal fans had their way, they would have a different manager right now. So, what you need to have is strong leadership in the club who have a vision aligned with the manager and believe blindly in that unless the situation becomes untenable. And it isn't untenable, right? So the fans, the pressure will definitely increase. The mood will change, and that's up to the club and Thomas Frank and the players to get right. And if they believe it, then they shouldn't sack him. They should just get on with their job. And then in January, back him with players that suit what he needs. And that's why that's really important, Mike, because you have to plan, if you want a successful football club, 3 years in advance. And then you have to stick to that plan and believe in it and not listen to the baying crowd. That's why Thomas Frank succeeded at Brentford, because they believed they were aligned, right?
Yeah.
That's why, is it Hurstler, the Brighton manager, was under massive pressure last year. They had terrible results. Suddenly this year, it's all starting to click in. They said, Tony Bloom said, and Paul Barber said, do not listen to the noise. This is our plan. And these people that run these football clubs are super intelligent, right? Venkatesham is an intelligent man, an operator in football. Paratici, steeped in knowledge and, skullduggery. And Johan Langer as well. These are intelligent people. They have to have a plan and they have to stick to it. And they can't listen to the crowd. Because if they sacked him after Saturday, that would suggest they had no faith in the plan that they just created. And that's a problem. So, no, I think they just stick with him. But, yeah, the pressure will definitely increase.
I'm glad that you mentioned Arsenal, because, Venkatesham stuck by Arteta. 2 back-to-back 8th place finishes before it started to get good. I back Thomas Frank to turn it around. Flav, the last question. Do you see Thomas Frank at Tottenham next season?
No.
Fucking hell. Oh God! Right.
I mean, look, no, I don't see him there. I don't see it. But I hope I'm wrong. I really, really hope I'm wrong. And I was wrong about Postecoglou. Right? I thought he would get it right, and he didn't. So I think that Thomas probably won't get the time. But I'm just going back to my previous answer. I hope that they have a plan, and I hope to stick with it. I'd rather see that. And despite fans, necessarily. Some half of them more or less want him gone. There are many out there saying, I don't have an appetite for just another manager. Let's just see what happens. Let's see where it goes. And a couple of wins will turn all that around, starting on against Brentford on Saturday.
Well, let's hope not. Flav, thank you so much for joining me today. The Elam Road podcast will be back after Spurs with a full-time show. Remember to drop a comment down below with your thoughts ahead of the game. It feels massive on Saturday for both clubs. So yeah, all of that, leave in the comment section down below.
Right, can I just give a shout out to
go on.
Just that I got a podcast called Football Between the Lines to do with HLTCO. No one was going to want to listen to the Fighting Cock. So if you like this chat, then go and listen to Football Between the Lines. That'd be great.
Yeah, I can vouch for that. Listen to it regularly. But yeah, Elam Road podcast will be back after Spurs with a full-time show. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Follow us on the socials at the Elam Road on Twitter, at Elam Road Pod on socials. Flav, good luck for the rest of the season. Good luck to Thomas Frank, but of course, apart from Saturday.
Absolutely.